Well, good morning, everybody. It's July 8th, 2020. I'm Jim Hodgson. I'm here at the Fort Worth Aviation Museum, home of the most touchable warbirds in Texas. And I'm here this morning with Jack Thompson. If I can get Jack in the frame there. There he is. Jack is with us, and this morning we're going to be talking about the OV-10 Bronco and Jack's role as a forward air controller. And Jack flew the OV-10, the 111, and what else, Jack?
That's basically it.
Okay, and we've had Jack on before, but give everybody a little bit of background on you and the Air Force.
Well, I started out in the Air Force as a weapons controller, a scope dove, intercept director, and was in the airborne portion there at the Super Conies, and that got me really interested in being a pilot. So then I got to go to pilot training, got the 111 out of pilot training. When it got grounded due to a wing coming off, a bunch of us got sent to the OV-10.
Okay, and where were you at the time that this all happened?
We were at Nellis Air Force Base.
Okay, so you were here stateside.
Stateside, that's right. And we had just started flying OV-10s to support the war in Cambodia.
Okay.
And the Cambodians' second language is French, so they needed forward air controllers who spoke French.
Were there a lot of those in the Air Force?
Not that we could find. And they took us from the 111, sent us to the language school at Monterey for 6 months to learn to speak French, and then we were going to go over and be able to converse with the ground troops over there.
Well, then did you go back to Hurlburt or someplace to learn to fly the OV-10?
Yes, we went from language school to Hurlburt, got checked out, and actually got over to Thailand the end of September in 1971. And there was obviously a gap there for people who could speak French and do forward air control. So the Air Force looked for anybody that spoke French that was in country, that would volunteer to fly and be in the back seat of the OV-10.
Okay.
We found guys who were cooks, intelligence, fuel truck driver, all kinds of people. Okay. To support the effort until we got over there.
Well, now the squadron you were in was referred to as the Rustics.
Right.
And a lot of people are familiar with the tactical air control squadrons, the TASs, but you weren't one of the TASs. The Rustics were the Rustics. They weren't the 19th or the 20th or the 23rd or the 27th.
We were operating location 1 of the 23rd TAS at NKP.
Okay, you operated in their area, but you were referred to not by number, but as the Rustics. And was it just OV-10s?
We had just OV-10s by the time when I got there. When the Rustics first started, they also had O2s.
Okay.
And
so
the O2s mostly flew at night, the OV-10s started.
So let's look at the airplane here a little bit. And now, we were talking a little bit before, and you mentioned that the loadout that you would take when you were flying the airplane, you were carrying a lot of HE, and you carried guns, and most of the Air Force didn't carry the guns in the OV-10s.
That's right.
Let's go ahead over and take a look here.
Most of the Air Force units that were flying the OV-10 just had smoke rockets. They had WOW 68, I think it was, launchers that carried 7. These are WOW 3 launchers that carry 19 rockets. And we carried these two with high explosive warheads, HE warheads.
Okay, HE meaning what?
High explosive.
Okay.
And then we carried a 7 rocket pod with flechettes, which are like little darts. And the warhead broke apart. It shot out all these darts.
So kind of like a shotgun.
Anti-personnel.
Okay, kind of like a shotgun shell effect.
Kind of.
Okay. But now with the rockets we've got here, the long noses would indicate that these are HE, and the short nose with the black nose on it would more than likely be a Willie Pete. But at any rate, these are all inert, but you can some people can tell the difference just by the size.
Right. Actually, I think these are different
But these may be, yeah.
Different style, different modification.
Okay, so you would carry 2 of these.
2 of these and 2 LTCOL and a 250-gallon centerline tank.
So that's a lot of gas, right?
That's a lot of gas, and we carried 4 M60C electrically operated 7.62 machine gun.
Okay, and those are essentially an M60 machine gun, but the barrels stick out of these out of these holes, and the machine guns are inside the inside here. I'm not certain if we can even open this up, but
I don't think we can.
no, I think it's locked down. But at any rate, it's 2 machine guns, and it's the magazines and the shoot beads.
500 rounds per gun.
So now the guys who flew in Vietnam didn't carry guns.
They had the guns, but they weren't supposed to use them except in an emergency.
Well, I understand part of that went back to something about if they had guns, they were more offensive, and it counted against F4s or something like that.
Something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We weren't supposed to. It wasn't supposed to be an attack aircraft. However, when we were flying in Cambodia, we were not able to get air support on a regular basis.
Okay, so that's why you ended up being kind of light attack with some.
That's right.
So talk to us a little bit about what your normal mission might be, if there's such a thing.
Normal mission would run 4.5 to 5 hours, so we'd have to fly from Yuban down into our area of operation in Cambodia, and most of our work was done with troops in contact down there.
And this is Cambodian troops, right?
Cambodian, supporting the Cambodian army against the Khmer Rouge. And that was our primary mission. Our secondary mission was to find supplies. Of course, we always tried to get air support whenever we could, bring fighters in to do the close air support. But if they weren't available, then we could do it to a limited extent.
And there was no Cambodian Air Force, is that pretty much correct? Or?
They had a few. There was very little.
What did they have? Where were they flying?
Mostly T-28s.
Okay.
And in the year that I was there, I never saw a Cambodian airplane or heard one.
Okay.
We were the only ones that were providing support for the ground troops.
Okay, now did you fly only in Cambodia?
No, we flew some in Laos, and we also flew in Vietnam. It depended on what the operational needs were. We deployed to Da Nang a couple of times, and we supported operations over there.
Now, is that what sometimes is referred to as the secret air war in Laos, in Cambodia?
Well, the secret air war was more Cambodia than Laos.
Okay. But that was during a time when most people didn't know that we were even there. So how now? Did you ever operate with or in conjunction with Val 4 or any of the other squadrons?
No.
Okay. So
now sometimes we got Navy air assets like A4s and A7s.
Okay.
That would support us, and we were able to use those. Love to get A4s. Those guys would get down in the weeds and put the bombs right on the target.
Okay, I was just going to ask, who was your favorite groups to control? So you really liked working with A4s?
Like the A4s, like the A37s out of Benoit. The A37s were our primary air support that we got in Cambodia. A4s were pretty rare.
Okay.
Except they didn't have another target.
Okay. So you worked primarily with Air Force and Navy. Did you ever work with Marine Corps? Or the Army?
Worked a few times with the Marines. I had a Marine observer that I flew a couple of times when we were over at Da Nang. We were deployed at Da Nang. We had Marine artillery observers in the back seat.
And what was their primary function?
They were spotting targets for ship gunnery.
Oh, okay. For naval gunfire support.
Gunfire, yeah.
Okay.
So that worked pretty well. I enjoyed that.
So what was different about naval gunfire from what you were normally doing?
Well, since I wasn't qualified to work with that, I mean, the Marine observer would would spot the targets and then walk in the artillery from the naval gunfire.
Okay.
And when we were working, of course, I'd mark the target with a white phosphorus rocket
Okay.
and give the fighters the instructions as to how to run in, where the friendlies were, where the enemies were, and run the operation.
Okay. I know I controlled naval gun a few times, and I always found it interesting because normally you'd give people a right or left, or a long or a short, but with naval gunfire you could also give them an up and a down,
Right.
because it was a low angle trajectory, and sometimes you were pounding a hole in the ground, not at the target, but if you had them raise or lower the gun 3 feet, 5 feet, or whatever, it would make a difference as to where that round was going to go. I remember we always had to be careful that we stayed off of the gun target line, because the trajectory was so shallow that there were a lot of skipped rounds.
I remember one day in particular called for I guess a Willie Pete round to see where they were going to hit, and we didn't see it. And after a couple more that we didn't see, the observer called for an airburst. The damn airburst was about 100 yards off our right wing.
Oh, geez. Some of it can get exciting. We've got a couple of names on the cockpit here. Can you tell me who these people are?
Howie Pearson was commander of the 23rd task.
Okay, I think it was the 23rd.
I think it was MPP. I did not know him.
But he was in Vietnam for 2 tours at least,
Yeah,
that I know of, because he was very well known.
Right. He was top of OV-10 in the Air Force.
Yeah.
And Sergeant Jerry Dufresne is one of our French speakers.
Okay, he was one of the guys who got snatched up from someplace
That's
to be a
right.
French
He
speaker.
got snatched up, and Jerry was one of our French speakers. It's kind of interesting to note, we had this cadre of French-speaking enlisted guys, and as their rotation date came, they disappeared and were not replaced, because those of us who went to language school for 6 months were supposed to be fluent in French and able to handle the airline.
And how did that work out?
Not very well, but fortunately, by the time we got over there, the Cambodians had found English speakers to operate their radios.
Okay.
So in the year that I was over there, I think I got to use French twice.
So the function of, as opposed to the Marine aerial observers that you used to actually talk to artillery batteries or ships or looked for targets and did that kind of thing, when you were flying with the Rustics, they were there primarily as translators.
They were translators. That's
Okay.
Right. When it was necessary to use French, they would talk with the ground, with the Army, the Cambodian Army ground
Okay.
radio operator, and then they would translate for us where the target was, etc.
So now the missions that you were flying in Cambodia, I would assume, are essentially a low threat environment. You didn't have air-to-air or an air threat to be concerned with?
No, we really didn't.
Okay.
We had small arms 7.62, and they had 51 cal machine guns, and there were some SA-7s reported, although I never saw an SA-7. That's
Okay.
heat-seeking shoulder fire.
Right, the small SAMs, the Strelas.
Yeah.
So
One thing I did see one day was a B-40 rocket that I think I could have, if I could have stuck my hand out through the canopy, I think I could have grabbed it.
how big? How is that different than some of the other stuff?
That's just, B-40 is about that long and about that big around.
Okay.
It's just their shoulder fires.
Oh, okay. Kind of like an RPG.
An RPG.
Okay. Okay. Now you mentioned the small arms fire and that kind of thing. What altitude did you fly your missions at?
We are not supposed to go below 1,500 feet.
Okay.
I said we're not supposed.
Not supposed to.
That's right.
So now, did you fly?
More like a 510.
Okay, so some of your missions, because you were carrying a lot of gas, meant that you had to travel a long way to get to where you were going, right?
That's right.
So what altitude did you traverse the areas at?
At about 10,000.
10,000. So
Yeah.
you'd go high and then...
We'd go high. It took us almost an hour to get down there sometimes.
Okay.
And then an hour to get back.
And then work down low, and you're working with ground units
Right.
virtually the entire time. So now did I know in Vietnam and other areas there was always a direct air support control center or DASC or something like that. Were you working with a DASC or direct with the units?
We were working direct with the units, but in order to get airstrikes and put airstrikes in on targets, we had to call 2nd Air Force in Saigon on our HF radio and get permission to drop bombs on the coordinates. We had to give them the coordinates, and if there were structures on those coordinates, they would deny the strike.
Okay, and what was the terrain in Cambodia like? Was it mostly canopy and jungle?
There was a lot of that. It was fairly flat. Parts of Cambodia were pretty hilly, but most of the area we were operating was near the Mekong River, so it was fairly flat, heavily forested. There were lots of rubber trees.
Okay.
Lots of jungle.
So, did you have a particular area that you patrolled, or did reports come in and then you went out and looked in those areas to see what you could find?
Sometimes we had advanced knowledge. Most of the time we took off, went down, and just see what we could find.
Okay.
Most of the time we did not have pre-assigned areas.
And so what kind of things were you looking for?
We were looking for troop movements, vehicles. There were certain places where the Khmer Rouge put their stores. We would try and search those out. We'd look for boats on the Mekong. And then, of course, we'd talk to our ground units, and they would know if they were friendly or enemy.
Now, you've talked about communication, so one thing I don't know if we've talked about with the OV-10 too much is this airplane in many cases became a command and control aircraft because of all of the communications capabilities. What kind of radios did you carry?
5 radios in the OV-10. There was an HF.
Which is a high frequency, because that one you can get long distance, yeah.
We could talk to either Yuvon or the Air Force headquarters in Saigon. And then we had 2 FM radios, and those are the radios that we talked to the ground troops on.
Okay.
We had 1 UHF radio, and that's the one we did most of our communication with, airports and the fighters
Yeah.
all controlled on UHF. And then we had a VHF radio for use in commercial or civilian terminals.
Okay, so you could pretty much talk to anybody, anywhere in the world, if you really needed to. I know many times when I was operating, communications would break down and we would end up being an airborne command and control center. A lot of cases just because of that.
Yeah, and oftentimes we wrote in grease pencil on the inside of our canopies.
Okay.
To keep track of everything. Sometimes at the end of the day, you couldn't hardly see out the left side.
Yeah, I'll bet that's true. What else would you like to tell people about the time you spent with the Rustics and the mission, and maybe how it was different than a normal FAC mission?
It was mainly different in that, we were not working primarily with U.S. forces.
Okay.
So therefore, we were kind of at the tail end of the logistical chain.
Okay, and it was a large.
We got bombs and bullets if they didn't need them someplace else.
Okay, and it was a large squadron, was it not?
No, our group only had 8 airplanes.
Oh, really? Okay, okay.
It was a small unit. We usually only had 1 airplane in the air at a time.
Okay.
But I flew 850 hours in a year over there. So I got plenty of flying.
Oh, good, I'm standing in an anthill.
Standing right
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, little excitement there going on. So, what years were you with the Rustics?
September 71 to September 72.
And how long did the Rustics operate?
Rustics operated from early 71 until all those got moved in 73.
Okay, and I understand there was maybe some of the Rustics who were involved in the Mayaguez?
I think there were still
Okay.
some Rustics there.
I seem to remember Ned Helms talking about there being some involvement with the Rustics in the Mayaguez incident.
Yeah.
So what did you do after you left the Rustics?
Went back to F-111.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what else did you fly in the Air Force between OV-10s and 111s?
Just right from the OV-10.
That was pretty much it.
Right
Okay.
back.
And went back to the 111. So the 111 was really your career airplane.
That was my career.
So when you look back at F-111s and the OV-10s, what's your thoughts about your time in the OV-10?
I loved my time in the OV-10. I felt like I was doing something really worthwhile by supporting the ground troops.
Okay.
The OV-10 was fun to fly. You could abuse it pretty much, and it was an honest airplane. Very simple. The 111 was a heck of a lot faster and a lot more expensive, a lot more sophisticated.
Yeah.
I loved them both for different reasons.
Well, I've had a lot of people say, what airplane was your favorite? And I usually tell them it's whatever I was flying at the time. You know, because there's something you're going to love or hate about all of them. But let's see if I can read the screen here, and I'm having trouble because of the sun. We've got a good group here again this morning. We've got David from Taiwan, and we've got some other people on here. I think we're running up close to our time limit. I'd like to thank Jack for standing in today. Gary is not with us, obviously. Gary had a medical issue and is not here today, so we're hoping he's going to be back on Saturday. And Jake will be back with us on Saturday to do part 2 of carrier operations. But now from the Fort Worth Aviation Museum, home of the most touchable warbirds in Texas, I want to remind everybody to stay safe and keep your distance. And we'll look forward to seeing you Saturday. And Jack, thanks for standing in today.
My pleasure.
Okay. Have a good week, folks.